Our question tonight comes from Issam Ikrimawi from BBC Arabic. Microphone.
Mr. Kerry, you spoke about the implementation of you didn't call it ceasefire, but how much commitment have you got from Russia? Because we've seen over the last week or so, or 2 weeks, that the escalation in the air bombardment had led to the humanitarian crisis when you have about 60,000 refugees massing on the border with Turkey. So how much of a commitment has Russia given you that it will de-escalate its part in this conflict? That's the first question. The second part is about how much leverage does the United States have on some of its allies in the region in order to persuade some of these groups who are not considered terrorist organizations by the U.S. to stop their participation in the hostilities?
Well, I think really Foreign Minister Lavrov ought to be answering the question about Russia's commitment to the cessation of hostilities. But I can just say that Russia said publicly at the first meeting of the ISSG in Vienna, and at the second meeting, and in New York, that Russia was prepared to implement a ceasefire.
And today.
And again today. And Iran likewise said that at the first meeting of Vienna and so forth. It was not Russia or Iran who stopped a ceasefire from being adopted at the very beginning. I want to make that very, very clear. And Stefan will agree with that, and our other ISSG members know that. So Russia has articulated a willingness to do this, providing that the other players are ready to enforce the full components of Resolution 2254 and live by them. Now, that's another part of this mix. So I'm not here to vouch for anybody's word, anybody participating in this. I said a moment ago, this will be measured by what happens on the ground. This will be measured by the steps that people take in the next days. And that's the true measurement, not the words on a piece of paper tonight or this morning, early. And I think everybody would agree with that. So we need to make sure this is fully implemented, and everybody has a responsibility to help do that. All the members of the ISSG committed to try to do that, including Russia, including Iran. Now, you'll be able to measure that as well as we will in the days ahead. And you ask about leverage. It's not a matter of you know, I mean, I suppose leverage here and there makes a difference, obviously. We all know that. But everybody engaged in this wants Syria to remain whole, to be peaceful, and to try to resolve this conflict. But there are different opinions within that everybody as to how that might happen or as to what outcome they'd like to see. And that's the challenge here. I think the United States has strong relationships within the ISSG. We have been able to come up now with 4 separate communiques in unanimous fashion with Iran, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Egypt, Qatar, Russia, China, the United States, countries with different beliefs and feelings, all coming to the same logical conclusion, though they have different ideas about how the outcome might unfold at this moment. But the best we can do is continue to work in a collegiate fashion. I don't think it's as much a matter of leverage as it is a matter of common sense about how you end this war and whether one can end this war. As I've said previously, it is my belief and the belief of the majority of the members of this group that there will not be peace in Syria if Assad is determined to stay there and lead the country. That's our belief. Other people have a different point of view. But we don't believe you can make peace, because we don't think that certain countries and certain players involved in this will stop fighting until there is a legitimate transition, which is what was decided in 2012. It's now 2016. In 2012, the UN and the countries that came together adopted the fundamental framework of what we're trying to do, which is a transition which allows the people of Syria to decide the future without coercion, without with full participation, and that's what has been adopted in this process. So if everybody honors this process, hopefully there can be a transformation. If they don't, there will be continued war. You want to speak to?
Поскольку Джон сказал, что на первый.
Since John said that it would be better for me to answer the first question, I will just reconfirm what we've already told you. You can read this in the document that was adopted today. To be more exact, that is that ISIL, Jbhat Al-Nusra, and other terrorist groups that have been recognized as such by the UN Security Council do not fit the conditions of ceasefire. That is why, as we, and as far as I understand, the US-led coalition will continue fighting these groups. The most important goal is to make this ceasefire upon agreement between the government and the opposition. It is said directly. It was not, by the way, my initiative or John's initiative. It was the initiative of one delegation, which John mentioned in a different context. It was written down that the ceasefire could not be started immediately. It would start in a week if both the government and opposition elaborate all the necessary measures. Well, yes, probably some influence. We will have to put some influence on Syrian sides, and I hope that all will put this influence both on government and various groups in opposition. But let me repeat that terrorists are beyond the ceasefire. As for adherence to agreements, our commitment, I would really like this commitment to be universal. I've already said that I agree with John that the best measure of our efficiency will be how the decisions that have been made will be implemented. So in 2012 we adopted the Geneva Communique. I've already reminded that right after this communique was adopted, we convinced Assad's government to agree to work on its basis, and the opposition said that they would not work on this, that they were not satisfied with it. We brought this Geneva Communique to the Security Council. Our Western partners rejected to adopt it, and it took us more than a year before the UN Security Council finally adopted this communique. And I don't want to look like someone who is trying to appease someone, but only when John took the position of the Secretary of State, we felt the wish to reanimate, to rehabilitate these agreements that had been concluded before John came to his office. But let us not forget that the Geneva Communique says that the principle of solving political problems in Syria is the agreement on transition provisions on the basis of mutual consent between the government and the whole range of the opposition. So if we are talking about commitments, about adherence to agreements, all these should be reconfirmed in an integrated manner, without emphasizing only just one word, that there should be, for example, transition, meaning the change of regime by it. And this transition should be on the mutual consent between the government and the wide range of opposition. This thing is usually kept silent about. They believe that a delegation of opposition can can be set up, which represents only a part of foreign opponents of the regime. Others can be turned into consultants. This will not work, and I'm convinced that this very clear mandate that is contained in the Geneva Communique and in the Resolution 2254 will be respected by our UN colleagues who play the central role in the political process.
That concludes